Welcome to another episode of The Dissection, where we cut to the chase and cut through the Hosh Kari to get past the surface anatomy, to the systemic anatomy, to the microscopic anatomy of all the topics that we talk about. Now, today, we're talking about the ANC response to everything that has been happening with the Mkhwanazi allegations and the Madlanga Commission. Everyone has been curious to see how the ANC would respond to the revelations, the evidence, the plethora, the preponderance of evidence that has been coming out and the other unfolding events which seem to be directly linked to the events at the Commission. For instance, I don't think we can ignore the timing of the death of the former police minister, the mystery surrounding the death of the former police minister, Nathi Mthethwa, a few days after his name was directly implicated in the Mkhwanazi allegations and testimony. This is something that cannot be ignored, cannot be downplayed, in my opinion. So, people have been saying, what will the ANC say? How will the ANC respond? And now we have an answer. The ANC has started rolling out their communication strategy. They're testing the waters. They're trying out some talking points. Some of the strategy can be observed from the articles which have been coming from those journalists. You know, the journalists who are typing, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? They're typing new things now and they're saying, well, if you think about it like this, it looks one way, and I'll tell you more about this. The fishers of evidence have now become typers of defenses and versions that they think will work. So we'll talk about all of that. So let's start with the ANC direct response. The ANC has responded to the questions around the notorious Brown envelope Mogotsi. This name, Brown Mogotsi, which Mkhwanazi told us about, which investigative journalists have really been tiptoeing around. They don't want to tell you anything about this guy. They are all waiting to hear about him at the commission and all of that. They don't really want to tell you. You know, investigative journalists, mainstream media, they've said, listen, we know Brown Mogotsi. Various people have said this, not just one person. They've said Brown Mogotsi is somebody who was a prominent CR17 campaigner. We know that he's got a foundation. His foundation has some case law or some cases which they took to courts, and then they became, judgments which were passed around various tenders, particularly in the hospitals in Northwest Province. And it has prominent people who worked in the office of the premier, for instance, as its directors. And at the same time, he was somebody who seems to be acknowledged to have contacts within policing, that kind of a thing. In as much as we know those high-level things, we still don't know who this guy is in the sense of what is the extent of his business empire, what is his estimated net wealth, who are the people that he actually knows within the CR17 community, and how prominent was he as an organizer and campaigner. We've just been given this high-level thing, and you would have expected, since Mkhwanazi mentioned him on the 5th of March, that by now, after having seen his messages from Mkhwanazi's phone, and also now the messages that he was sending with Vusi Matlala, and we don't actually know the full extent of the messages that are on Brown Mogotsi's phone. We don't know how much he's messaging, who he's messaging. Unfortunately, that's right now something we cannot access. But from the two phones where we've seen messages from him to the Commissioner of Police in KwaZulu-Natal, General Mkhwanazi, and also messages to Vusi Matlala, you can see something's up with this dude that is bigger than it seems. Anyway, the ANC has now commented on this guy. They've responded to questions about the notorious Brown envelope Mogotsi, and they've condemned him. They've said, this guy, we condemn him. He's no longer even a member of the ANC. And they've also pushed a narrative that I think they're testing and trying out to exempt Minister Senzo Mchunu from the Hosh Kari behavior. They're saying, people are victims of these types of cadres. The manufacturing of consent is totally underway. And it's to be expected, really, that the ANC would try to do as much damage control as possible, before things continue. And right now there's this gap. We're waiting for the ad hoc committee to start. We're waiting for the Madlanga Commission to continue because, as you know, Khumalo fell sick, couldn't continue, and we have to now wait until the 13th for the Madlanga Commission to continue so that we can hear the other evidence that Khumalo will have. So it looks to me that the ANC is now trying to see what they can do in terms of public relations, damage control, as it pertains to this massive crisis. Because if they cannot repair the damage in the hull of their ship, the senior party leaders may sink. This scandal is not small, it's significant, and the information around this big five cartel could go to places that the ANC is not willing to have us understand and fully know. So already, we know from General Dumisani Khumalo that the role that Brown Mogotsi was playing was to collect funds for provincial conferences of the ANC to get favorable outcomes for a particular faction, for accommodation for senior ANC members, for gala dinner sits at ANC fundraising events where the president was one of the guest speakers. We also saw how the political killings task team came to be disbanded around the time that an amount of, in total, 137,000 was paid by Vusi Matlala through an intermediate company to Brown Mogotsi. The 31 December disbanding of the task team happens at a key moment in Vusi Matlala's criminal career when he is at the point where he's gotten a massive tender from the police, but has now been raided at his home and at his business premises by the GCI ops and is now panicking. He's talking to his intermediate to the police minister, and after he makes a 25% payment, holds off on the remainder of the money, something happens which is to his favor. And I don't think it's coincidental. I don't think we can remove it or disregard that timing. That disbandment is the key smoking gun. It is a decision which was taken, which was irrational, a decision which is taken, which seems to be unlawful, and I think is unlawful, to remove a task team saying it's not necessary, it's not successful, when that task team has been proven to have been successful, has been commended to have been successful, and to remove it in a manner that is contrary to how it was set up. And we've heard prosecutors say that it was an irrational decision, one that was counterproductive in a period where we still have political killings going into another election. So that's the smoking gun. That's the smoking gun. The task team is disbanded after two dangerous Hosh Kari fathers have had their premises raided, after an internal audit of the tender that was awarded to Vusi Matlala has started. The timing is not insignificant. It's not dismissible. So we already know that. We saw the evidence. We already know this timeline. We are aware of the timeline. So the ANC then had a press conference on Thursday, and they spoke about some of the issues on that day. This was their first press conference since the Madlanga Commission began hearing the testimonies of senior police officers, the top cops, who've been speaking on this issue, trying to help us understand the nature of the Hosh Kari behavior and actually telling us that there is a big five cartel, which Katiso Molefe and Vusi Matlala are part of. So Fikile Mbalula, who is a presidential hopeful for the ANC 2027 elective conference and the current Secretary General of the party, held this press conference. He discussed a lot of issues, including the following: electricity and ESCOM, the SIU investigation of the Tembisa Hospital, the ANC roll call process of its councillors, the municipal elections that are coming up, and this is basically their attempt to look busy and effective in the municipalities. Then he spoke about the Madlanga Commission and Brown Mogotsi. Then he spoke about the Integrity Commission and Senzo Mchunu, lifestyle audits, by-election results, international relations. So those are the big topics where he was speaking on. On Brown Mogotsi and Senzo Mchunu, he then made a variety of remarks. Let's start with Brown Mogotsi. This is what he had to say about Brown.
Brown Mogotsi is a reflection of a bad ANC member, if he is. Because he is implicated on siphoning money in the name of the ANC. ANC can't associate itself with such bad behavior. Siphoning money in the reports and all of that, involved in this and that, illegal missions and all of that. ANC can't pride itself of such people if they are its members. And they will face the full wrath of the ANC and accountability from the side of the party. We are a big organization, so he is just but one of others who behave like that. We will never associate ourselves with characters like Brown Mogotsi if he's a member of the ANC and his activities. Matlala, it's not even an issue where we have to dig. They must face the law where they are and their associations and all of that. Even if it means those associates are in the ANC, they must be rooted out, they must be smoked out, because that association is wrong. It can't be associated with the movement. Use the ANC as a cover for criminal activity. We know of such characters who have abused the name. It's not only them, there are some in the system who have abused the good name of the ANC for their criminal activities. Sometimes to the detriment of the organization, but without knowledge of even the people they claim to be representing. Somebody will go around and say, Minister so-and-so have mandated me and all of that. You meet people around and then they say, hey, I intervened for this and that. And the money has gone into the pockets of criminals. We know that our organization is infiltrated by criminal elements and it extends to cartels. Sometimes not in the knowledge of comrades who are in positions of leadership. And they've become victims of these criminals.
What?
Sometimes not in the knowledge of comrades who are in positions of leadership. And they've become victims of these criminals. Criminal elements who are throwing our name as a movement and the ANC in vain will never be tolerated, even for a day in our party.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
What indeed? What indeed? Do you see the strategy? Do you see the game plan? So the strategy is basically a square, right? 4 pillars, if you will. Deny his current membership. Say, this guy, if he's a member, not a member, we just deny, downplay his actual direct involvement. And sometimes you don't really have to have your membership card active to still have influence within the ANC. But they're arguing that, membership has expired, whatever lapsed, and I'll tell you, there's a statement that came out later. Argue, number 2, that he's a bad apple in a sea of many apples, and therefore is not reflective of the party and necessarily its current disposition and positioning. This is all New Dawn type of messaging. So, bad apple in a sea of many apples. Then they argue that he's working without the knowledge of the people that he's name dropping. They don't know. This is just a scammer scamming Vusi Matlala. It's a case of, thieves stealing amongst each other, scammers scamming each other. And then argue, number 4, that, these individuals such as Senzo Mchunu are victims of Brown Mogotsi. They are victims, not active participants in any of this, just victims. And this is obviously based on what they are assessing as being the evidence that is currently available, right? Based on what General Khumalo presented. So, the ANC did issue a statement after the Thursday press conference titled Membership Status of Mr. Opa Brown Mogotsi. This is what they said. The African National Congress has noted recent allegations that certain individuals, including Mr. Brown Mogotsi, are alleged to be involved in serious organized crime activity. Our membership records confirm that Mr. Mogotsi's ANC membership has expired. We can now confirm that Mr. Mogotsi is therefore not an ANC member. These allegations about Mogotsi are deeply concerning, not only for the individuals involved, but for the communities and institutions whose safety, stability, and confidence are undermined by criminal syndicates. The ANC wishes to make it clear: we distance ourselves unequivocally from any form of organized criminal activity. Crime and corruption are the enemies of development and democracy. They corrode the very values for which generations of South Africans sacrificed in the struggle for freedom. The ANC will not allow its name to be associated with those who betray the principles of our movement for personal gain. So that's the full game now. You see how it's going. So here are my thoughts on this approach. I'm not persuaded by the arguments for the following reasons. You may be persuaded. Maybe we can have a debate about it in the comments. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed, take time to subscribe. Otherwise, it's Hosh Kari behavior. Take time to subscribe, build this community. We're aiming now for 120,000 subscribers. We've hit 110,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody who subscribed. We're trying to get through the Hosh, get through the Hosh Kari, and really expose a lot of stuff that's going on in a variety of topics. And you may find that you've been watching the channel for a very long time, but you haven't realized that you're not subscribed. That's Hosh Kari behavior. In the comments, you'll see people who say, I thought I was subscribed, only realized I'm not subscribed. That could be you. So let me get back to my thoughts. Subscribe today. It's free 99. Free 99. Mahala till December. Just subscribe. It's easy. You press the subscribe, you press that notification button, and then you won't miss an episode. So back to the episode now. Here are my thoughts on this approach, these talking points. I'm not persuaded for the following reasons, and we can talk about it in the comments if you have a different view. I'm happy to have the debate. Number one, this bad apple argument. Few bad apples. Look, Brown Mogotsi is not only a bad apple, he's a big bad apple in the ANC. He's big and bad, not bad and bougie, big and bad, right? We've seen how journalists have described him as a CR17 campaigner. That much is known. Prominent CR17 campaigner. They've spoken about how they knew him from that period of time. Not only did he have ANC membership, he clearly had high access to powerful players in the ANC, was working with them, and was involved in some capacity in a process which led to the election of Cyril Ramaphosa as president of the ANC. That's not a regular apple. That's not a regular apple. That's a special import apple. That's one of those apples which cost pink apples or whatever they call them. This ain't just no regular apple. Brown envelope Mogotsi is not just a bad apple. He's a big bad apple in a barrel of powerful apples. That's the reality. So that's the first thing. Number two, the bad apple argument almost feels like people don't know what the saying is. You don't need that many bad apples in the barrel. In fact, the argument about bad apples is that a few of them are sufficient to spoil the whole barrel, especially if they're left in that barrel for long periods of time, which appears to have been the case with someone like Brown Envelope Mogotsi. This is not just a bad apple just lying on the road somewhere which you can pick and throw in the bin. It's a bad apple that has been in the barrel. And that's what the argument is. And it's important to point out something that I think is important to realize. When somebody who is a regular member of an organization such as the ANC goes to branch meetings or whatever, they're not going to be able to claim that ministers are their colleagues, comrades, that they are sending messages to senior police officers, that they can send messages to chief of staff of the police. That is not the regular member experience. The regular member is not hanging around with senior people, collecting monies for the party. That's not regular member behavior. We know that Brown Mogotsi has been acknowledged by the minister as somebody that he knows of, is a comrade. He may deny the full extent of their relationship, but it's clear there's a relationship there. That is not typical member behavior. And I think that undercuts this argument that, there's just a guy who was within the organization and the minister and them are victims. And then the fourth point I want to make is that the conversation that Brown Mogotsi had with Vusi Matlala was not just talk. He had conversations with him which led to transactions which are documented and proven. Transactions which were associated with events that we know which happened in the real world, key event being the disbanding of the Political Killings Trust Team. That is the red flag in all of this, right? Brown Mogotsi was definitely doing more than what the minister needed. He was taking money for his own things now. He was using Vusi Matlala as his cash cow as well. Because, that's what criminals and skebengas do. When there are Hosh Kari behaviors within the tender system, what people then do is that you maybe contract another guy to do the service. You stole some money. The guy that you contract is also going to steal some money. The guy that he contracts is also going to steal some money. And then the money that goes to the project ends up being much less than what was allocated to the project because a bunch of criminals have been stealing the money at every level. So at some point, Brown Mogotsi knows what he's got here. He's got this criminal who is associated in heavy Hosh Kari behavior, this cartel leader, but he needs him. This guy is desperate for help. He needs him to get the dockets out of the hands of the Political Killings Trust Team. He needs him for a variety of things. His massive tender of 360 million rands is under threat. So if I'm holding you by the gonads like that, I'm also going to squeeze, even if I'm squeezing on my behalf and someone else's behalf, right? So the fact that the minister did, in fact, disband the task team or attempt to disband the task team, issuing the directive on the 31st of December is something that cannot be erased from history. The fact that people did in fact go to the ANC January 8 celebrations in Cape Town with that money those individuals whose flights were booked, that happened. The fact that Sibiya did in fact get his hands on the dockets, was in fact running around. Those pieces of circumstantial evidence cannot just be dismissed and we can just be told that no, he didn't know, he wasn't aware, because the minister took an action, the police minister took an action that directly benefited or seems to have been in line with the benefit which would accrue to one Vusi Matlala and try to protect his interests. That's evident. That's evident. Now, News 24 has, the same people who were asking for evidence, the same people, they've now been running this line of argument as well, that the minister may not have known, and that because he seemed to be opposing the tender at a later stage, that therefore means that there's no causal link between Vusi Matlala and the minister. Now, I'm not persuaded by this for this reason. Politicians do damage control when they see that things are getting out of hand, and if they can see that things are heating up. And damage control is part of it is covering up things. So disbanding the task team, for instance, was one way of trying to prevent the police from getting closer to figuring out the full extent of the Hosh Kari behavior of this Big Five cartel. That's one thing. So that was a direct action, stop further progress in investigation. Number two, cancelling the tender. That's a cover-up attempt in my reading of the events that played out to try to do damage control by actually removing the tender which the media is concerned about, this 360 million tender which is given to this chap who's never given a panadol even to a Hosh Kari mama. He's never even run an ab course for the people in his security company. He's not a health expert in any shape or form. So there was an attempt to bury the Hosh Kari behavior in the desert, mafia style. So if the tender's cancelled, maybe the media coverage will go away. And in America, what they like to say, they say sometimes the cover-up is worse than the original act. So the fact that at some point he took an action to try to remove the tender is not something that's mutually exclusive or contradictory to me. It doesn't negate all of the stuff that we've seen. And remember, we still need to get explanations for why Fikile was at Vusi Matlala's penthouse and why he was also meeting with Vusi Matlala at the Zimbali Lodge, which is owned by Hangwani Morgan Maumela. That's still a factor that we have to fit in here because these three individuals are interconnected, the four of them actually, Senzo Mchunu, Fikile, Vusi Matlala, Hangwani Maumela. Don't forget the Hangwani Maumela factor. Part of what the SIU announcement and the asset forfeiture announcements, we're going to seize this guy's assets. By the way, they're not even tickling the surface of this guy's assets. He owns supercars. Cars which are worth 25% of the amount of money that they say they've seized or the assets that they're in the process of seizing, because they've got this order that is helping them to seize those assets. So point I'm making is don't forget that Hangwani Morgan Maumela angle. And remember, Hangwani Morgan Maumela is linked to the president in two ways. Number one, is a relative of the president. President says he doesn't know him. But number two, he's linked quite intimately with one of the prominent figures in the president's orbit, and that person being Penjani Chauke. Penjani Chauke has been implicated in the Phala saga as being one of the fixers. He's somebody who's been traveling with the president to a variety of countries, Saudi Arabia, all of those places. He was one of the guys there. And because of that, there is a closer connection to the president through Penjani Chauke even than through blood. And that's something that must be mentioned. So when Vusi Matlala is saying that Fikile is his business associate, he says that's his business associate. Question then becomes, how can there be a business association between Fikile and Vusi Matlala? And also, what is the relationship between these people to the point where they are meeting at Hangwani Morgan Maumela's mansions? Right? These are connections that still need to be fully ventilated and they cannot just be erased. But looks like the media is going to try to play some game to try to say, listen, Senzo didn't know Mogotsi was acting on his own, and they're going to try to see if they can stop the bleeding at the Mogotsi level, and then he becomes the fall guy. There's another guy who's already fallen out of a hotel in France, could also be another fall guy, right? At some point, 48 Laws of Power says you need somebody to blame, you need a scapegoat to try to damage control and get the public to be moving. So there are various things that have been playing out which seem to be all attempts at trying to manufacture consent, shift public opinion, and try to move away from some of the implications as they are associated with people who are prominent, and perhaps even to try to save Senzo Mchunu's political career, because right now it is teka-tekering. It is like it's shambles. It's shambles, to be quite honest. So they did speak about Senzo Mchunu and that he's going to go to the Integrity Commission, and this is what Fikile Mbalula had to say.
When will Senzo appear before the Integrity Commission? Senzo and whoever implicated will appear before the Integrity Commission, and the Integrity Commission does not announce its work. But I can assure you that they will appear before the Integrity Commission, and it might be as we speak already they've appeared. We don't keep track of that work of appearance of individuals because for every NEC meeting, the Integrity Committee reports to the NEC on the cases that they've undertaken. So since the terms of reference have been finalized, of which we have circulated to all structures, so these meetings, the establishment of provincial commissions will be established, and all of us will undergo this particular workshop. But part of the foundation course we are doing for our members has got an element in it, or in that syllabus, matters of integrity and ethics in terms of that work. So Comrade Senzo will appear before the Integrity Commission, and all other members who are required by all standards to either voluntarily present themselves, or they will then be summoned by the Integrity Commission. And then we'll keep you abreast about the outcome once the NEC have received the reports on those matters.
The whole Integrity Commission and the internal ANC processes is an argument at this particular point. I don't find it to be something that people will buy into. We've seen so many people who were implicated at the Zondo Commission. 1 billion was spent, 4 years and all of this stuff. And those people are still operating, freely, and they are still occupying positions of power. They went through the Integrity Commission and they came out showered with honey and nectar, smelling like roses, according to the Integrity Commission, even though to everyone else, people were like, I don't know, man. We can still smell it from way over here. Once a skunk does its skunkery on you, you can try to put honey and nectar, but it won't remove the scent from the skunk juice per se. And it sometimes seems as if that's what the Integrity Commission has been operating at. At some level, they were very keen to remove people within the Zuma faction, to root them out. But it doesn't look like there is a real agenda to root out unscrupulous individuals, however they're implicated. And I don't think anybody will buy into this as an effective accountability mechanism for Senzo Mchunu based on where things are right now. I don't think that people are going to buy into it. And there are fair criticisms of the way the Integrity Commission has been operating, despite what Fikile Mbalula may say about it, right? One of the other interesting things that I want to point out and observe towards the end of this episode is that, in the whole press conference of the ANC that they held on Thursday, one thing was not mentioned. Big omission. No mention of the national dialogue. Have you noticed that the talking points around the national dialogue seem to be, dying down? It looks as if the idea is quietly being suffocated by the organization, in a room somewhere in the back, right? It's being put to sleep slowly and slowly and slowly. The national dialogue, the real one, is already happening. General Mkhwanazi started the national dialogue on the 6th of July, the most important dialogue. And I think it will continue at the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. The national dialogue that they tried to launch was shambolic. It didn't seem authentic. It felt like a campaign, and I think the public never really bought into that. The Mkhwanazi dialogue is the national dialogue of 2025. The Big Five cartel is the national dialogue of 2025. The Hosh Kari behavior that we are finding out about is the national dialogue of 2025. It looks as if they're acknowledging now that their version of the national dialogue is not real. It's not authentic. I don't know. What do you think? Are you seeing the same thing? Let's have a conversation about The ANC responses to the Hosh Kari behavior being exposed in their organization, the Brown Mogotsi of it all, the Vusi Matlala of it all, Integrity Commission, the quieting down of national dialogue. Let's talk in the comments. Is it going to be sufficient for the ANC to deny Brown Envelope Mogotsi the way that Peter was trying to deny Jesus? Remember, Peter also was on some, I don't know this homie. They were like, don't you know, like, I don't know him. I told you I don't know this guy. What you talking about? I know Brown Mogotsi. Hey, ANC, you try to take out a strategy from, the Apostle Peter. Is that going to work for you? Guys, I'll meet you in the comments. Let's have a conversation. I'll catch you there.